Welcome back, folks. This is Greg the Mad Scientist Bashiro with 360 Sports Network 3SN on your Twitter Nation accounts. Tonight, we're going to explore the wide, wide world of wide receivers. And with me, as always, our faithful companions, James, the Value Man Dotson, and Alex the Saint, the Laverson. Alex, how are you tonight?
Oh, I'm wonderful. My favorite time of year, and I can't be more excited to discuss wide receivers, so I'm just ready to get things rolling.
Let's get it rolling, guys. It's a pleasure to be back yet again, and let's get this show right on the road here. For those who are your first-time viewers here at 3SN, what we've done is between the three of us, as well as another one of our fantasy football experts, The Lost Cause, and our customizable cheat sheets, all available at 360sportsnetwork.com. We have 5 rankings we all break down our top 20 rankings for the wide receivers. We then take those rankings and can come up with a consensus ranking of 1 through 20, and that's what we're going to present to you tonight. And it starts with the obvious number one choice, the unanimous number one choice amongst all of us, Megatron Calvin Johnson. We all know what he can do. I guess the big question would be, we'll start with Greg, when do you draft him? How early?
You know, Megatron's one of those guys that you can get away with drafting a wide receiver, your first pick in your first round, no matter where you are on the board. You can build a team around this person. He is that good and that consistent.
Yeah, I agree with the Mad Scientist for the most part. I mean, I don't know if I would draft him necessarily between 1 and 5, but I definitely think middle of the first round to late first round, early second round is definitely deserving of Megatron.
Well, it's tough to say that he had a bad year last year, almost 1,500 yards, but really, for being a decrease of almost over 500 yards from the previous year, it looks bad. But at the same time, though, he got his touchdown totals back up. So what we've seen in the past 2 years, he's gotten lots of yards, he's gotten lots of touchdowns between the 2 different years. So it's all, no matter what league format you're in, there's no doubt he's the number one. And yeah, as early as middle of the first round in a standard league, I think is definitely worthy of Megatron. And our number 2, also unanimous pick, Demaryius Thomas, which after what happened last year in the Peyton Manning offense, again, he's right back where he should be, up at the top of the charts. Again, we probably think late first round to early second round. Is that where you're thinking, Alex?
Yeah, I'd say so. I really love Demaryius Thomas. It's also him being in that great system, too. I know some people are wondering now that Sanders is there, is that even going to maybe diminish some of his targets? I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think it's crazy people are even worrying about that. Demaryius Thomas is a perfect wide receiver in that system. He's 6'3", 230 pounds. He's just a sort of big athletic wide receiver that NFL teams covet. And you know, people are worried about I wouldn't say people are worried about his production, but people are wondering, is it going to keep it up? Because they just have so many targets. Now, and I said in our quarterbacks podcast a few nights ago that we shouldn't expect to see the same high-octane offense. Well, no, we should expect to see the same high-octane offense we saw from the Broncos last year. But is he going to get 14 touchdowns again this year? Actually, I think he will. And
You can't, as long as you're not expecting it, right, Greg? I mean, 14 is very much possible again, but you just can't expect that from your guy.
Well, you know, Peyton Manning surprised a lot of people early last year when he threw 6 touchdown passes in one game. Then he turned around 5 touchdown passes in another game, and he was averaging between 4 to 5 touchdowns each game, spreading the ball out, and that's where Demaryius Thomas just ended up putting a beat down on every other fantasy football wide receiver out there. So, you know, with that said, depending upon what Peyton Manning is going to do, yeah, I mean, I think you can expect that.
And I think that's what makes him worthy of that late first-round pick for sure. And at this point, too, if you're in your draft, normally the top-tier running backs are gone. You can get Demaryius, who is, you know, he's not tier 1 because I think Calvin's a tier all by himself, but he'd be your tier 1.5 for sure. Because I think he's pretty much, well, I think our numbers here show it. He's head and shoulders above the next group going through. And let's go on to that next group. At the top of that is A.J. Green is our consensus number 3 pick, and he's just improved one year after the other. And even with Andy Dalton, who's not the greatest quarterback in the world, he still puts up great numbers, 90 catches, over 1,400 yards last year, and double-digit touchdowns. If you can get a guy with double-digit touchdowns, you got to go after him, right, Greg?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, this is a guy that I feel confident picking up in the 3rd or 4th round. I mean, he's that good.
Yeah, the question is, though, 3rd or 4th round, no doubt about it. Most guys are looking to get him end of the 2nd, early 3rd. How early do you go with him, Alex? I mean, do you take the risk early 2nd round? Because if you wait any longer, he's probably gone by then.
You know, I would take him in the 2nd round. I mean, in most leagues, it's between 12 and 16 teams. At that point, I think a lot of the top running backs are gone. So you need more playmakers, and talents like A.J. Green are going to go fast. So I would take wide receivers such as A.J. Green in the 2nd round. And the thing I like about A.J. Green is every year he's been in the league, and he's only been in the league 3 years, but he's had a great rookie year. He had a great sophomore season, no sophomore slump, and a great year last year. He's putting up points. So I see no reason why the Andy Dalton A.J. Green show should slow down. I'm really a big fan of A.J. Green.
Again, double-digit touchdowns almost every year, 180 targets last year. Those are the kind of numbers that I look at. How many times are they looking to throw him the ball? And, I mean, that number sort of speaks for itself.
Well,
they want to get him the ball.
Well, I said in the podcast the other day with the running backs that it is going to be a running, with the new system in place, it is going to be more of a heavily run-oriented offense. But it's not. You're not going to see A.J. Green miss really many targets. They're still got to throw the ball sometimes. And I know the Bengals have other players that could catch the ball, but A.J. Green's still your main man there. And considering the question was, do you take him in the 2nd round? I say yes. So will he get 11 touchdowns and 98 receptions, 1,500 yards? If he doesn't get that, I think he'll get pretty close to it. So I still think it's a safe bet to snag him up in the 2nd round.
Yeah, he's been consistent, and that's pretty much the name of the game. The next guy has been consistent the last 2 years as well. Dez Bryant comes at the number 4 spot, 92 catches each of the last 2 years, 1,382 yards in 2012, about 1,233 last year, and over 12 touchdowns each of those years. Those are pretty big numbers. Again, Dez Bryant you've seen going middle to late of the 2nd round in most mock drafts. Is that the proper place, Alex?
Yeah, I would say so. I still think, a second round. My overall consensus is going to be if you can get a top receiver in the 2nd round, I'd take him. So, if you're asking me if it's Dez Bryant or A.J. Green or Demaryius Thomas or Calvin Johnson, I think if it's one of those top 5 receivers in the 2nd round, you should take them.
What are your thoughts on Dez Bryant, Greg?
I like him. I really do. I think it all depends. If you are in a very deep league, and when I say deep league, I'm talking you have more than 12 people in your league. Yeah, I'd look at him in the 2nd round because he's definitely a value pick if he's out there. If you're in a league where you're only drafting, you have 8 to 10 people drafting in the league, I'd wait to the 3rd or 4th round, to look at Dez Bryant. Remember this. Tony Romo is a very good fantasy quarterback. With that said, he's going to be spreading that ball around, and yes, Dez Bryant is all that and a bag of walnuts.
All right, guys, let me completely blow your minds right now. You know I'm a big Romo fan. You know I'm a Cowboys fan. I love their offense, especially with fantasy. I actually have Dez Bryant rated as my number 7 wide receiver. I am extremely worried about Romo's ability to throw the deep ball, and that's when Dez Bryant is at his best, is going for the deep balls and the jump balls. Until Romo can show me in these practices during preseason and during these preseason games that he can throw it deep, I'm a little concerned about Dez, and I'll take a couple of guys ahead of him. I'll take a Brandon Marshall, for example. He's at number 5. I'll take a guy like him, Julio Jones, even Antonio Brown ahead of him.
See, the thing that causes me to really not like Brandon Marshall in that particular spot is that he led the league and dropped passes last year. And as you well know, drop passes are lost opportunities which you can never get back. And there's just something about Brandon Marshall that holds him back from that being that top receiver that's out there. And that's one of the problems out there. The other problem with Jay Cutler. So, with that said, that's why I would rather see Dez Bryant, even though you have no confidence in Tony Romo throwing the deep ball. Dez Bryant is a playmaker.
Well, to refute that real quick, and I'll let Alex continue to bash you a little bit on this one, I think, Greg. He may have had the most drops, you're right, Brandon Marshall, but he still had 100 catches, which ranked 4th in the NFL last year. So it's not like it absolutely destroyed him the whole way through. Go ahead, Alex.
Let's look at Brandon Marshall's numbers the past 2 seasons. 2012, 118 catches, 1,508 yards, 11 touchdowns. Last year, 100 receptions, 1,295 yards, and 12 touchdowns. Why is it that this guy just seems to really be, I don't know if I want to say underappreciated, but these numbers are like Terrell Owens, Randy Moss, Marvin Harrison numbers from the early 2000s. Why is he not getting the same respect? This is unbelievable. Is it just because he plays in the Bears offense?
I think Greg hit it. I think it's the fact that Jay Cutler is your quarterback, kind of like the Tony Romo effect, a guy who's really a good fantasy quarterback, who gets you lots of passing yards out there, but somebody who just doesn't win the game. So that's something that can go against him. And also, I think he hit it on the head, too, with drop passes. People see, oh, he leads the league in drop passes. That's points I'm losing. You know what? Yeah, he may be dropping 30 passes in a year, but he's still catching over 100 as top 5 receiver quality. As long as you're not losing points in your fantasy league for drop passes, then he's got to be in your top 3.
I think also something that's been really, I don't want to say held against Marshall, but, we all know he's diagnosed schizophrenic. If I'm correct, I think he is diagnosed as schizophrenic. He had the incident where he hit his girlfriend, I think a few years back. And I think a lot of people, kind of look at that and wonder, what if, there's some trouble going on in the middle of the season? I mean, is he going to be suspended? Are we going to have, a Ray Rice situation on our hands? It just seems like players who kind of get into this kind of trouble always seem to kind of, people kind of, ease back.
Yeah, I would have to agree, but I don't think that's the case so much. I mean, the guy does have some mental health issues, no doubt about it, but he's got that under control. So, you really can't look at that as a reason, but I think he is underloved and underappreciated, no doubt about it, mostly due to the fact that he has got Cutler under center there, no doubt. And it's either feast or famine with that Chicago offense. And until Cutler can become a lot more consistent, and until Brandon Marshall can stop dropping, can stop with the dropsies, so to speak here, I don't have him rated as high as, let's say, Dez Bryant. Now, it doesn't mean that this guy's not a tremendous value. He is a tremendous value. And this would be something, I would be a bit surprised that Brandon Marshall doesn't get, drafted until the 4th or 5th round. And in the 4th or 5th round, yes, that is the tremendous value that, even the 4th or 5th round and this guy is not picked up, grab him.
I'll tell you right now, Greg, you won't have to wait until the 4th or 5th round because I'll take him in the 2nd round with pretty much no questions asked.
Well, you can't go in the 2nd round, and I'll be grabbing some running backs. But
yeah, you go for that. We'll talk about that on another day. But I think you said it right, though, is that, Dez Bryant versus Brandon Marshall, I'd be happy with either one of them, to be honest. And that's kind of what you're seeing right now. It's just a personal preference at that pick. So, let's move on to numbers 6 through 10 on our list here. Number 6 is kind of a wild card. It's a little interesting. He ranks 3rd in terms of our projected stats on the customizable cheat sheets. We all like him in the about 6 through 8 in terms of our personal rankings. That's Julio Jones, and the big issue for him is coming off of a very shortened season, only 5 games played because of that fractured foot down there in Atlanta. Hopefully, it sounds like he's going to be coming back and being completely healthy. Matt Ryan, hopefully back on top of his game. Roddy White playing across from him as well. What do you expect from Julio Jones there, Greg?
The old song, me and Julio down by the schoolyard, no doubt about it. Julio, he could have a huge season depending upon how healthy he stays and depending upon how Matty Ice holds up and the whole Falcons offense. The Falcons seem to be a team that's either cursed or blessed all in the same breath. You know, when things start falling apart, they fall apart royally to the point where the whole season and the entire offensive fantasy football structure and that team suffers to no end. However, with that said, when things are clicking, there is a tremendous upside to having Julio Jones on your squad. And I think that's the reason why Julio Jones is not, spoken in the same breath as, let's say, somebody like a Demaryius Thomas or even a Dez Bryant or an A.J. Green. Once again, as a value pick, definitely as a fourth or fifth round, no doubt about it, to go after Julio Jones because I think he will have a stellar season this year.
Yeah, I agree with Greg for the most part. I mean, like I said a few moments ago, if you can get one of those top 5 receivers, take them. After those top 5 receivers, at least in my opinion, there seems to be like a big gap or big drop-off. And Julio Jones is a great talent. And it's weird because he was so highly anticipated coming into the league, and he still is. You're just kind of waiting for him to really break out. I mean, 2012 he had a pretty good year. Had a really good year, actually. Almost 80 catches and 1,200 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. And then there was last year. Well, let's keep in mind all the Atlanta Falcons, had a bad year.
You know what? You hit it right on the head. You hit it right on the head, Alex. All the Atlanta Falcons, could have had a breakout year last year. I mean, Jacquizz Rodgers was right there on the cusp, and then he fell apart. Steven Jackson was right there on the cusp, and then he fell apart. Julio Jones was right on the cusp, and he fell apart. Matty Ice, the same type of thing. And it's like when they bust, boy, do they bust.
Well, let me just blow your minds again. I'm the value man, so I believe the numbers big time. And when it comes to the projected statistics for this year, you would not believe it, but Julio Jones actually becomes the number 10 overall player on the draft board in terms of complete value, in terms of positioning and having, essentially kind of like a baseball wins above replacement. Julio Jones locks in at number 10 overall. So just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about how some guys might be looking at their draft. All right, number 7 on our list as we continue down our list here is a guy who knows how to catch the ball, knows how to run after the catch, knows how to return punts, knows how to do a lot of things. Antonio Brown, just a solid all-around player. I think the big thing for him is the consistency. Almost guaranteed a 5-catch, 50-yard game. You don't have the goose eggs like you can get with a guy like a Julio Jones or a Dez Bryant. Is that what makes him so appealing this high up there, Greg?
Yeah, definitely. This guy's got a work ethic second to none. He's also got a chip on his shoulder because there, I think, were 194 players that were drafted ahead of him back when he came on board back in 2010. But Antonio Brown, what can Brown do for your team? Yes, we can say a lot about Antonio Brown. First of all, he's the favorite target of Big Ben. Second of all, he's not afraid to go up the middle, a la Hines Ward. And third of all, he's probably one of the best possession receivers the Steelers have. So with all that said, very speedy, lots of yak, definitely. And I would actually put him ahead of Brandon Marshall, to be honest with you. But, it's not my call.
Wow, that's some bold statement right there. Alex, I know you're a big Antonio Brown fan.
I am, man. He was always kind of slowly watched after when Mike Wallace was on his way out. And look, he exploded. 110 receptions, 1,500 yards, 8 TDs. So, like I said in other podcasts, if the Steelers line hold up, no injuries, the Ben, all these things, there's no reason why Antonio Brown can't have another big year. I think it's weird because with the numbers he put up last year, especially in the receiving yards, you don't hear about too much in the terms of the elite wide receivers. Maybe it has something to do with his size, being only 5'10". I don't know. But this guy, I am a very big fan of his. He is so fast, and no reason why he's not a top-tier wide receiver.
Very good. Coming in at number 8 is another guy who had a rough year last year, Well, at least it feels that way when he didn't have his quarterback. But then you look at his numbers, and holy cow, he still put up 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's Jordy Nelson. He's about as much in his prime as you're going to get as a 29-year-old. Now with a fully healthy Aaron Rodgers back, Alex, is he back to top-tier potential?
Oh, I'd say so. He's one of those guys that it's someone I'm still kind of, I don't want to say cautious about, but last year had 85 receptions, 1,314 yards and 8 TDs. So, but the bottom line is he plays in the Packers offense. He's a great wide receiver. It's not something you're going to think too much about. He's the main guy down there in Green Bay. So, if Aaron Rodgers is healthy, who's going to get in the ball most of the times? It's him. So, he's the guy you want to go after.
Definitely, definitely. Let's move on to number 9 and 10 on our list because they have something in common in that they are our first players who are actually the number 2 wide receivers on their respective teams. Number 9, we have Alshon Jeffrey, who's obviously behind Marshall there in Chicago. And then number 10, Randall Cobb, who's the number 2 behind the aforementioned Jordy Nelson. Two very different kinds of players. Randall Cobb, who will touch the ball in any different way that he can, out of the backfield even. He'll get probably 30 rushes this year without too much difficulty. Alshon Jeffrey, a taller possession receiver, and rumor says that a lot of people are expecting both him and Marshall to get 100 catches. So these are our 9 and 10 guys. Greg, which one do you prefer?
Well, Randall Cobb broke my heart last year, whenever he only played 6 games, and it was hard to really get any consistency out of him because he had the injury bug going on. And, last year, we're only looking at having 4 touchdowns on a Randall Cobb. Alshon Jeffrey, however, played a full 16-game season, had 7 touchdowns, which was a nice increase from 3 back in 2012. There's definitely an uptick and an upswing here with Alshon Jeffries. I definitely like Alshon Jeffries, and I think you are into something here when you say that these two guys could be both almost on equal footing there in Chicago.
What about you, Alex? Cobb or Jeffrey?
I probably have to go with Cobb. I said Jeffrey earlier, but again, you're playing in a high-octane passing offense with the Packers. You got a second receiver for the Bears, a second receiver from the Packers. You're going to go with the second wide receiver from the Packers. So I think Randall Cobb is going to have, if I had to pick one of the two, I think he's going to have more fantasy value than Alshon Jeffrey. It's not something I'd overthink, to be honest.
Yeah, the only issue I think with Cobb, again, knowing your league, is rushing going to, not be as effective as the receiving because he'll get a good chunk of yards there. And also, of course, the injury concern, only playing in 6 games last year after a broken leg. So just keep that in mind as you're going through your draft, always knowing your league. So there's your top 10. Again, Calvin, Demarius, A.J. Green, Dez Bryant, Brandon Marshall in your top 5. Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Jordy Nelson, Alshon Jeffrey, and Randall Cobb to round out the top 10. As we look at the next group of guys, 11 through 15, this is where you start to get to the area where you still get lots of talent and you should get lots of good, solid, consistent performances, but the breakout potential from these guys is a lot less, it feels like. They're all solid players, so I'd want on my team, but nobody who's really going to jump out at me as, a big home run hitter. At 11, it's Vincent Jackson. Number 12, Andre Johnson. Number 13, Larry Fitzgerald. 14, Pierre Garçon. And 15, Keenan Allen. Again, a second-year player who made a big splash. In most leagues, he was undrafted. Let's start with Greg on this one. Of those guys, Vincent Jackson, Andre Johnson, Larry Fitz, Pierre Garçon, and Keenan Allen, which one are you most likely to go after, say at this point, probably the 4th to 5th round?
Probably Pierre Garçon at this. Even though I'm not enamored with his quarterback, RG3, I think he'd do a heck of a lot better, and his stats would be better if Kirk Cousins was in there. Pierre Garçon still has a lot to prove out there, and I look at him as probably being the strongest of all those candidates.
I like Pierre Garçon. The one thing about him, 110 catches, 113 catches last year, really good for a PPR league. only 5 touchdowns last year, and the most he's had in the last 3 years was a 6-touchdown performance back in 2011. So if you're looking for if you're in a yardage league, a PPR league, that's the guy you want. If it's a touchdown-heavy league, maybe stay away from him. Which one of these guys sticks out for you, Alex?
I don't know how you guys are just looking past Andre Johnson.
Thank you.
Like, what is wrong with you two? I mean, okay, the Texans went 2-14 last year. Very spotty quarterback play. Andre Johnson still has 109 receptions, 1,407 receiving yards. Now, granted, he only had 5 touchdowns, but let's remember, Andre Johnson is not happy in Houston. He wants to increase his value. He's 32. He's not going to get any younger. People think he's going to tank, actually. People think this is the time he's going to go downhill. I disagree. To me, Johnson's given me no reason to think he's not going to put up solid fantasy points. So, just the fact that with the quarterback play and the disaster season the Texans had, he still had almost 110 receptions and 1,400 reception yards. I think it's ridiculous just to count this guy out. I don't see it, to be honest.
181 targets speaks for itself.
Exactly.
110 catches speaks for itself. A lot of people worry that with Fitzpatrick there, no quarterback. Well, guess what? He had Case Keenum throwing to him last year.
But at least Case Keenum could throw the deep ball and not throw the INT all the time.
And Fitzpatrick's going to be any worse than that, though?
Fitzpatrick tips his passes off all the time. That's why Fitzpatrick's no longer in Buffalo, and that's why, Stevie Johnson's in San Diego. Or not San Diego, San Francisco right now.
Well, maybe. And if you're not a Fitzpatrick fan, which obviously the mad scientist over there isn't, I think Fitzpatrick is a solid quarterback. I used him as my fantasy quarterback for a good chunk of the second half of the year in a couple of leagues because I needed a quarterback. Here's the main thing for me. Last 2 years, Andre Johnson has over 3,000 receiving yards. I don't need to say much more than that. He's in my top 10 receivers, and there's really not much question in my mind. When everybody's passing up on him, yeah, I'm with you, Alex. I'll grab him.
The mad scientist is worried about, having no one to throw the deep ball to him. You guys forgetting, Bill O'Brien picked up Tom Savage, and he has a deep arm. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah, Savage could jump in there over Fitzpatrick anyway. So you got lots of different options there, and he's shown no matter who throws the ball to him, he'll catch it. All right, let's look at the next set of guys. We're looking at numbers 16 through 20. We start off with Wes Welker at 16, Michael Crabtree from San Fran at 17, Victor Cruz, Percy Harvin, and a surprising one in here, Cordarrelle Patterson, rounding out our top 20 consensus picks. Let's start here with Alex. Which guy here really jumps out to you?
Michael Crabtree is still high on my list, and I know he only got to play 5 games last year, but I just really like what he can do. He's the main target down there in San Francisco. Has so much talent. The year before, he had 85 receptions, 1,105 yards, and 9 TDs. I just feel like if I'm a betting man, I put my money on Crabtree. Now, Wes Welker is someone you got to consider too, but he's getting older. He's in a system with the Broncos, has so many targets, especially now with Sanders there. I just don't know. And for some reason, I'm never big on Eli Manning targets. So out of those people, I'd probably go with Michael Crabtree. So if he stays healthy, I think he's going to have a big year because he's also going to catch patches for Colin Kaepernick down there in San Francisco.
Well, we know Stevie Johnson will drop them and blame God afterwards, but I don't know. Greg, I know you're a huge fan of Percy Harvin here.
I am a huge fan of Percy Harvin. However, I'm going to have to take Victor Cruz over Percy Harvin.
Oh, wow, okay.
And it kind of goes back to the whole Eli Manning thing. Yeah, Eli Manning had a horrible year last year. However, who are Eli's receivers? Victor Cruz is going to be the deep threat. Victor Cruz is a proven commodity. He's been out there. He's durable. He played 14 games last year, 16 games the year before. He's fairly consistent. The problem that I'm running into with Percy Harvin is the fact that he is so injury prone. He's got the migraine headache issue. He had problems last year where he only played 1 regular game, and he got a concussion the first half of the playoff opener against the Saints. This guy, he's not a durable player. Although he's got a great quarterback and he can be explosive when he gets out there and if he stays healthy. But notice the number of ifs I used in this prior sentence. Fantasy football is not a game of ifs, because if that's the case, you might be thinking about maybe having an iffy fantasy baseball team the next year.
Yeah, you make a very good point there. The injury concern, especially if you're going to draft a guy this high, you want somebody who you can rely on. And Percy Harvin, at this point in his career, I don't know if we can rely on him right now. Even when he was healthy at the very end of last year, they still weren't using him. It might have been that he wasn't in sync enough, or he wasn't healthy enough, or they just didn't need him. And all that can factor into what happens this year, too. So in terms of safety, I think you're right. Staying away from Percy Harvin is good. People are not giving Cordero Patterson the chance that I think they deserve either. And especially if you get points for return yards, he's definitely need to be possibly a top 15 wideout at that point.
I would like to give him credit. I really, really would, except who's his quarterback?
Yeah, I was just about to say Teddy Bridgewater.
Bridgewater is going to do more than you guys think.
Well, but once again, we don't know. And in fantasy football, it's all about what have you done for me lately.
I agree 100%.
Well, who was his quarterback
with the
last year?
scientist.
Who was his quarterback last year, though? You can't say Christian Ponder was a great fantasy quarterback either.
And that's why Cordero Patterson's down where he's at.
Well, and that's why Cordero Patterson in the last 4 or 5 games of the year had a touchdown every game and had 100 yards on average throughout those games. So if you're going to take a risk on somebody, he's somebody who I would guarantee definitely go for that.
Cordero Patterson
The
versus
late rounds
Victor
take
Cruz.
risks on him.
Victor Cruz.
He is more proven. I can't argue with you on that one. Victor Cruz is definitely more proven, and I have him above Cordero as well. But that's just another guy to potentially look at when it comes down to it. And if you have already 3 wideouts and you need or you're going for the 3rd or 4th as a potential breakout, I'd go for Patterson over any of the other guys that we just mentioned, just because he could explode and put up essentially, the top 5 numbers is not out of the question in my mind. Is it guaranteed? Far from it, but it's worth that risk if you already have a few guys. All right, so that rounds out our top 20. Just a couple honorable mentions who were close there. Roddy White was near there at 21. Deshaun Jackson's around there. Julian Edelman, T.Y. Hilton, Michael Floyd. Jeremy Maclin coming off injury. Let me just say this, guys, because any of these guys are still, solid wideout 2 or flex position plays for sure. What are a couple of these guys, whether we just mention them or even somebody a little bit deeper in your sleeper pool, that we all forget about, and maybe somebody we should definitely be looking to pick up as who's just dropping too far in your draft pools?
Well, I would have to say it's the venerable Wes Welker.
Absolutely. I mean, we all kind of just overlooked him. A couple of us don't even have him in our top 20. At the same time, though, he's a guy who just catches passes. So why wouldn't you go for a Wes Welker? How about you, Alex?
What about Anquan Bolden?
What about Anquan Bolden? Why is he nowhere to be found on these lists? Is it because they just don't throw it enough with the Harbaugh offense?
I think in fact, he's 33. He's that system. He's kind of, I don't say forgotten man down there in San Francisco. Like even just a few moments ago, I said, who else is going to catch passes for Colin Kaepernick down there instead of Crabtree? I didn't even think of Anquan Bolden until just now. So he's definitely going out of sight. But last year, 85 receptions, 1,179 reception yards, and 7 TDs. Pretty solid numbers. So
remember, that was with Crabtree out, though. How is Crabtree returning and becoming?
You could make the argument that's going to free up more coverage on him.
Well, that's the thing. If Bolden was the definite number 1 receiver, I would agree with you. But I think it's pretty safe to say that Crabtree will be as the number 1 target out there. So I guess that would be my only argument against it. But yeah, you look at those numbers and you say, how can this guy be ranked outside of the top 30? But he is pretty much anywhere you look. He is on our projections as well, and none of us have him in the top 20. But
here's something for you guys. Reggie Wayne.
He's getting old. That's the issue there. Well, I think you can say that for Bolden too, to be honest.
Well, here's the thing. He's 35. Yeah, it's the ACL tear that really has to do with it. But the question was for a sleeper pick. or yeah, keeper league or something like that. 2 years ago, he had 106 receptions, 1,355 yards. So I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's someone to keep an eye on.
Yeah, coming off the ACL injury at 35, that's a little iffy for me. But hey, Reggie Wayne is a competitor. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he comes back. Here's another name for you. Emmanuel Sanders as a slot receiver in Denver. I mean, again, the Denver offense, that can boost some big numbers, right?
Absolutely.
All right, how about another one? This is my all-time favorite that nobody's looking at. Golden Tate across from Calvin Johnson there in Detroit.
You know, I thought of that. I'm not sure how I feel about him. It just, I mean, he's just because he plays for, the Lions in that system, he's gonna put up some decent numbers.
Right, and if you can get, 65 catches and 900 yards in Seattle, and that was as the number 1 receiver getting double coverage a lot, imagine what he can do as the 2 receiver across from Calvin, one-on-one coverage the whole time, at 26 years old, into his prime. It's not like he's an old fogey or anything. I think Golden Tate is going to finish this year as a top 15, top 20 receiver.
Absolutely.
Anybody else you wanted to mention, Greg? Or
Well, I mean, a couple players. I mean, if we're down here in the trenches talking about Golden Tate, you also have to take a look at the likes of a Cecil Shorts.
I like Cecil Shorts, especially. I mean, you got to worry about who's throwing in the ball, obviously.
Right.
But also with the young talent that's going to be around him to draw away some coverage, the Marquise Lees and the Allen Robinsons. I think he's definitely a potential to go. I know you're also like Riley Cooper out there.
Like Riley Cooper, and another guy I really like is T.Y. Hilton, Andrew Luck's favorite target.
Exactly. So there's lots of depth at wide receiver. So, I mean, obviously you wouldn't want T.Y. Hilton as your number 1 receiver, but at the same time,
he'd be a flex pick, somebody to pick up in the 12th, 13th round.
Absolutely. Definitely. Now, the last name I wanted to mention, we need to talk about a rookie, Sammy Watkins.
Yes.
I mean, last year at college, over 100 catches as a college receiver is pretty darn impressive. 1,500 yards. But again, that's, at Clemson, not here in the NFL. Can E.J. Manuel find him enough?
That's going to be interesting to see if that can actually happen. But, yeah, I think it can. I really do. I mean, the whole Buffalo team right now is in sort of an enigmatic state. They are in the process of reinventing themselves, and they can be very surprising. And I really think Sammy Watkins can actually probably have a bigger impact than Julio Jones.
Wow. Now, that's some big shoes to fill there, though.
No, really, I mean, I'm thinking about it because you have 2 teams right now that are in similar straits. You have the Atlanta Falcons, which are just coming off a dismal, miserable year last year, looking to reinvent themselves, and you have the Buffalo Bills, who are basically reinventing themselves again. And with the speedy Sammy Watkins, in his rookie season, I really think that there could be something to this Manuel Watkins thing that could really take off. And that's why I'm making this comparison, because I think it could happen.
Yeah, keep your eye on that. Watch through the rest of preseason to make sure and see how they connect. I mean, you won't see, the big deals until the regular season anyway, but it's worth taking a look at. Now, the big question that everybody's been waiting this whole time for, Greg, Josh Gordon, if you had to make a draft right now, not knowing what his suspension is going to be, if there will be a suspension at all, what do you do? Do you look at picking up Josh Gordon, and if so, when?
I think there's too much good talent out there. Yeah, Josh Gordon is a talent, but once again, he plays for Cleveland. And yes, I know you're on BBW for, 4 hours, and yes, the Youngstown fans are just Cleveland crazed beyond belief, and I love them for that. But really, Josh Gordon, if I were to pick him up, basically he'd be a 7th, 8th round pickup. Suspension or no suspension. Miles Austin would be probably pretty much in the same category with him.
Yeah, I think if Josh Gordon, even if he does have, I would say, a 6-game suspension, he still, in my mind, is worthy, like you said, about the 8th to 10th round, as definitely worth going for. Because at that point, you're getting a bench player anyway. Take somebody who has, that's about as big of an upside as you could possibly have if, suspended the whole year and now nothing. So if I had to draft right now, I'd probably look at picking him in the 9th to 10th round and, hoping. And if nothing happens, oh well. I'll drop him and I'll get somebody halfway through the season. No big deal.
Well, there you have it, folks. The most in-depth analysis this side of the Mississippi River and the other side of the Atlantic. So, with all that said, I think we've pretty much analyzed every worthy, analyzable, how's that for a $64 word, analyzable wide receiver in the NFL. For Alex the Saint Delamerson and James the Nightman Dotson, I am the Mad Scientist. Tune in next time for our analysis of tight ends and defenses. Have a good night, folks.